Welcome to This Explainer. I am stepping in as your master coach today because we need to deconstruct a absolutely critical element of your Cambridge AS and A-level journey, using past papers for Afrikaans Language 8679. Now, you might be thinking, past papers? Easy. I just do them over and over. But here is the massive reality check. The official Cambridge Principal Examiner reports reveal a fundamental, widespread misunderstanding. Using past papers for Afrikaans revision is literally one of the most misapplied strategies globally. I see it all the time. Students treat these complex exams like a simple memory test, a box-ticking exercise where you just regurgitate facts. But that is not what examiners are looking for. They are not testing your memory. They are evaluating your cognitive architecture. How do you actually process information? So we are going to fix that right now. In this session, we're going to dive deep into exactly what Cambridge examiners are hunting for. We'll explore how to ruthlessly dissect complex, high-tariff questions, how to allocate your time like a professional, and how to deploy critical thinking strategies that automatically launch you into those elite, top-tier marking bands. So let's start with the elephant in the room. Why do students find applying concepts to unfamiliar contexts so incredibly hard? This is the core bottleneck. It's the ultimate friction point when transitioning from pure memorization to actual high-pressure exam application. Think about it. You can sit in your room and memorize every single vocabulary word, every grammatical rule, and every stylistic device in the Afrikaans 8679 syllabus. You feel prepared. But the exact second you sit in that exam hall and face stimulus material you have never ever seen before, complete panic sets in. Your mind goes blank. Why? Because you're lacking a systematic framework for processing unfamiliar data. Relying on rote learning instead of procedural logic is a guaranteed way to hit a ceiling with your grades. The examiners explicitly note this in their reports. Adapting your knowledge to a completely new context-specific scenario isn't just a bonus skill, it is the definitive separator between average, middle-of-the-pack grades and absolute top-tier excellence. So today, we are completely rewiring how you approach the unknown. Here is our roadmap for today's session. 1. Core principles. 2. Methodology and debate. 3. Roadblocks and alerts. 4. Pause and practice. 5. Strategy recap. Let's jump straight into part 1, core principles. Listen to this direct quote from the Principal Examiner report. Candidates referencing cross-topic connections achieve significantly higher marks. This is a massive clue. It means the theoretical architecture of your revision simply cannot be a list of isolated bullet points. It's not about knowing 50 disjointed facts about Afrikaans linguistics. Your knowledge base must rest on precise definitions, yes, but more importantly on identifying causal relationships and integrating those with other syllabus areas. The examiners are actively, specifically scanning your responses for these cross-topic connections. They want to see the butterfly effect in your analysis. For example, how does a specific stylistic or syntactic choice made by an author suddenly shift the tone? And how does that new tone subsequently impact the reader's interpretation of a broader cultural theme? It is a giant, complex web of interconnected ideas. If your past paper revision strategy involves just checking the mark scheme for one correct factual answer without stopping to understand this conceptual, interconnected framework, you are leaving an absolute mountain of marks on the table. Let's look at the anatomy of command words, which perfectly illustrates the difference between superficial breadth and analytical depth. When you're staring down a high-tariff question, we're talking those massive 9 to 15-mark questions, the command word is your absolute master. Think about the difference between explain and evaluate, or describe versus to what extent. Superficial breadth is seeing a word like explain and panicking, deciding to just list 10 random facts about the text, hoping something sticks. You're just throwing paint at the wall. But the academic benchmarks for Afrikaans language demand logical, structured reasoning. The grading framework explicitly and ruthlessly prioritizes analytical depth. When you see a high-power command word like analyze or evaluate, your first job is to hunt down the prompt's hidden constraints. You literally cannot just give facts. You have to break the information down into sequential logical steps, explore the causal relationships we just talked about, and rigorously evaluate alternatives. The shift is non-negotiable. You must evolve from a purely factual approach to one of rigorous, structured reasoning. Moving right along to part 2, methodology and debate. To really understand this, I want you to picture 2 types of scholars in our digital study suite. Let's call them Alex and Sam. Now, Alex is highly technical, brilliant at memorizing formulas and grammatical facts, but freezes up on open-ended evaluation. Sam is the total opposite. A creative thinker, amazing at forming grand arguments, but seriously struggles with structural precision and managing time. When they look at a complex Afrikaans text analysis prompt, they have a massive debate. Alex pushes hard for a purely factual approach. Let's just list all the linguistic devices. Sam argues for a conceptual approach. No, let's talk about the overarching cultural themes. Who is right? Well, neither, and both. This exact tension brings us to the method mark strategy. This is a crucial assessment principle where marks are awarded for the procedural journey itself. Examiners reward systematic processing and evidence-based reasoning, not just jumping to the final conclusion. The tension Alex and Sam are feeling is the urge to rush to the answer versus the absolute necessity of showing you're working. You have to map out exactly how point A logically, inevitably leads to point B. That process is where the top-tier marks live. So how do we actually bridge the gap between Alex's facts and Sam's concepts to unlock those top-tier marking bands? We deploy a rigorous 3-column framework that perfectly aligns with the Cambridge assessment objectives, AO1, AO2, and AO3. Column 1 is descriptive, representing AO1. This is Alex's comfort zone, identifying the given information and stating the linguistic facts. But remember, this is just the foundation. It only unlocks the lowest band of marks. You have to push into column 2, the analytical phase, or AO2. Here, you take those facts, break them into logical steps, and explore the causal effects of the Afrikaans language used. Finally, we reach the summit, the evaluative column, AO3. This is where Sam's conceptual thinking shines, but with structure. To achieve the absolute highest marks, you must evaluate alternatives and provide heavily justified recommendations anchored directly to the text. You can't just drop a bomb like, the author uses a metaphor, and walk away. You must evaluate why that specific metaphor is infinitely more effective than a literal description in this exact cultural context, and critically, you need to identify any limitations of that language choice. When we synthesize all of those objectives, we get a completely standardized 6-step sequence for processing literally any past paper question. Let's break this technical workflow down. Step 1, deconstruct the question. Before you even look at the text, isolate that command word and flag those hidden constraints. Step 2, extract relevant data. Now you scan the stimulus materials with laser focus, pulling only what you need. Step 3, select your analytical framework. Are you viewing this through a descriptive, analytical, or evaluative lens? Step 4, execute with clear notation. Write out your logical steps so the examiner can see your brain working. Step 5, verify the results. Pause and ask yourself, does my analysis actually align with the constraints of the prompt? Check it for reasonableness. Step 6, present in the correct format using flawless Afrikaans terminology. Listen, adopting this highly technical sequential workflow completely removes the guesswork. When the clock is ticking in the exam room and the pressure is spiking, having this procedural framework hardwired into your brain ensures you are applying systematic processing perfectly. Okay, we are about to hit the absolute hardest roadblocks in drafting essays, and I'm going to show you exactly how to get unstuck. But before we solve that, let's pause the session for a quick second. This shift from factual recall to systematic processing is the ultimate exam hack. If you want to master this kind of cognitive strategy and never miss a weekly Cambridge breakthrough, you need to subscribe to the channel right now. Head over to @acetheexam_IGSE, hit that subscribe button, and make absolutely sure you enable all notifications. We are constantly dropping elite O and A level strategies just like this one, and you do not want to go into your exams without them. All right, let's get back to the framework and look at the major traps examiners set for you.
Which brings us to part 3, roadblocks and alerts.
I've combed through years of official Cambridge Principal Examiner reports for Afrikaans Language, and I've pulled out the top 3 classic recurring mistakes. These are the exact traps that well-prepared, high-achieving candidates fall into year after year. These 3 roadblocks are the primary culprits that destroy structural precision and bleed marks from your essay. Let's dissect them. Alert number 1. Answers are way too vague. Examiners consistently report that students make these massive, sweeping, philosophical statements about the Afrikaans language, but they completely fail to back them up with specific textual evidence or granular linguistic details. Alert number 2. Forgetting to check format, presentation, and terminology. This happens so often when students rush. Practical application requires professional execution. If the prompt specifically demands a formal, persuasive article, but you accidentally write it with the tone of a casual diary entry and you drop all your advanced terminology, the entire procedural framework collapses and your AO marks tank.
Finally, alert number 3, and this is without a doubt the most lethal trap: generic answers that are not specific to the context given. I see this all the time. A candidate will write a beautifully analytical paragraph. It sounds incredibly smart, but it's completely untethered from the stimulus material. It's a one-size-fits-all paragraph that could literally apply to any book ever written. Examiners are ruthless here. They explicitly state that every single point you make must be inextricably linked to the provided scenario. Let's look at exactly how to fix that generic trap by applying our cognitive strategy. Contrast a generic, flawed answer with a context-specific scenario link. Imagine Alex and Sam draft this generic sentence. The author uses emotive language to make the reader feel sad. That is incredibly superficial. It's vague, it's generic, and it's going to score in the lowest possible band. Now, let's rewrite it using the procedural framework. Listen to the difference. By utilizing the highly emotive Afrikaans phrase X, the author specifically highlights the profound despair of the protagonist within the harsh socioeconomic setting of the narrative, which directly compels the reader to evaluate the broader cultural implications of poverty. Boom. Do you see the transition? We took a weak, generic observation and transformed it into a flawless, full-mark response. We explicitly named the technique, provided the specific evidence, explored the causal relationship on the protagonist, and evaluated the overarching cultural impact. Every single word is chained to that specific scenario. That is the gold standard of critical analysis.
Let's put this to the test in part 4, pause and practice. I want you to treat this next segment like a live, immersive workshop. Picture a complex text excerpt popping up on your screen right now, and a 60-second timer starts ticking down. Can you instantly identify the core assumptions made in that stimulus? What are the alternative interpretations? I want you to mentally deploy the deconstruct, solve, and evaluate method we just learned. First, scan for the descriptive facts. What is actually given? Then break it down analytically. What limitations exist in this evidence? If a character in the Afrikaans text confidently states a fact, is it actually objectively true, or is it merely an assumption heavily biased by their limited perspective? You must interrogate the text. Those higher-order assessment objectives, AO3, demand that you ruthlessly evaluate the quality of the evidence. Do not just blindly accept the text at face value. Look for the cracks. Consider how a specific, nuanced Afrikaans phrasing might completely alter the final conclusion. Simulating this exact level of conceptual, high-stakes pressure during your revision is the only way to genuinely prepare for the real thing.
Now, let's play Spot the Flaw. I'm going to systematically dissect a terrible student answer so you can see the examiner's marking criteria in real-time action. Trap 1 on our board is failing to evaluate alternatives. The student reads the text, makes one definitive, stubborn claim about its meaning, and completely ignores the massive, glowing neon signs pointing to a secondary, more nuanced interpretation. 0 marks for AO3. Trap 2, using the incorrect format. The prompt explicitly asked for a structured analytical report, but the student panicked and wrote a rambling, descriptive narrative. They completely ignored the constraints. Trap 3, lacking justified recommendations. The student does a decent job analyzing, but then the essay just ends. It stops abruptly without synthesizing any of those brilliant findings into a powerful, justified conclusion based on the evidence. By recognizing these exact flaws, the marking criteria suddenly makes perfect sense. You have to constantly check for reasonableness, rigorously apply the correct formats, and justify every single claim you make.
Let's bring it all together in Part 5, Strategy Recap.
If we synthesize this entire masterclass, everything we've talked about boils down to 3 core memorable pillars mapped directly to your new procedural framework. Pillar number 1 is your absolute first move, the 3-step question scan. The very second you lock eyes with a past paper question, you aggressively deconstruct the command words, extract the hard data constraints, and deliberately select your analytical framework. Pillar number 2 is your writing engine, the paragraph balance formula. You must ensure that every single paragraph you write logically moves from identifying descriptive facts, AO1, smoothly into analytical logic, AO2, and collidates in a powerful, evaluative, context-specific conclusion, AO3. Pillar number 3 is your safety net, the last 5 minutes review checklist. Do not just sit there when you finish early. Verify your results. Ensure your Afrikaans terminology is absolutely flawless and contextually accurate. Check that your presentation format perfectly matches the examiner's explicit request. This 3-pillar system is the ultimate refinement of the deconstruct, solve, and evaluate cycle. We have fundamentally rebuilt your theoretical architecture for approaching Afrikaans Language 8679 today. But here is the hard truth. Knowing this elite strategy is only step one. Executing it consistently, flawlessly, under brutal exam conditions, that is where the true challenge lies. Crushing Cambridge exams requires relentless, consistent strategy. So I'll leave you with this provocative question. How are you going to actively shift your revision tonight from lazy rote memorization to deploying this exact procedural logic every single time you open a past paper? Because reaching those top marking bands demands nothing less than complete analytical depth. Now, if you want to keep leveling up, hit that subscribe button for @AceTheExam IGCSE right now. Turn on that notification bell so you never miss our future exam hacks. And before you go, drop down into the comments and tell me exactly what your target grade is. Commit to it right now. Thank you for joining me for this explainer. Go dominate those past papers the right way and keep refining that logic.